The Afrikan Mode of Production, or AMP, is the way that African political economies were organized in pre-colonial times. The AMP is composed of 5 elements. These 5 elements govern African political economies in the pre-colonial period. The first element of the AMP is generalized labor. This was public collectivized labor without pay for public infrastructure projects with the assurance of collective ownership of that infrastructure upon completion. Here we see the historical birth of the commons. Prominent examples of this generalized labor process are the Men's Dam, commissioned by Nasut Namr in ancient Kenya, along with the development of revolutionary Somalia under Siad Barre, as well as the Great Wall of Benin. The second feature of the AMP is the Universal Commons. Edward Blyden, in his work African Life and Customs, describes the inherent communalist component of African life in that all water, land, and employment existed and was distributed in a commons. This means that these were public resources used for the benefit of everybody, and that nobody in these African societies was meant to be left behind. The third element of the AMP is the domestic economy in rural regions. Cheikh Anta Diop, in his books Pre-Colonial Black Africa and the Cultural Unity of Black Africa, spoke about how the domestic economy in Africa was the diametric opposite of the capitalist economy, meaning that in rural areas of Africa, the economy functioned along familial lines. Families took care of each other. Families helped each other. Families pulled their resources together to strengthen their cultural ties. This is a quintessential feature of African political economies. The fourth feature of the AMP is the Metropole. Now today when we look at the world and examine these metropolitan areas like New York, LA, DC, Paris, Tokyo, Rio, and Dubai, etc., we think that these originated with the West. But according to Cheikh Anta Diop in his book Civilization or Barbarism, the concept of the metropole as the focal point of the political economy originated in Africa. Common examples of African metropoles are Menefer in ancient Kimi, Kerma in Kush, Ile Ife of Oyo, and Fumban among the Bamoun. The fifth element of the AMP is private sector socialism, or an economic democracy ran by workers based upon local traditions. This is private commerce with cultural regulations. This is what many African people know today as Susu. It was the way that African people planned their economy for preordained results that would benefit their community. They used customary regulations to develop their economy to produce optimal goods and services. This type of commerce within the AMP did not necessarily include the state at a macro level. However, local communities functioned as a microstate. Dr. Okoth Agenda uses the inverted pyramid concept to illustrate the way land tenure functioned in pre-colonial Africa, with the immediate family having dominion over local decisions, ancestral lineage in the middle, and the general community at the foundation. A contemporary example of this are the Council Protocols of the Jamahiriya, formulated under Muammar Gaddafi's Third International Theory. Here, the occupational elements of social relations are more important in the provision of land access than private ownership. Dr. Asenji Afana in The Economy of West Africa, Perspectives on Development, affirms that Africa had experienced all types of pre-capitalist social formations from small-scale communalism to large empires. In the 19th century, most of the civilizations on the continent were clan democracies. Though these clan democracies were slight deviations from the AMP in its most pristine state, Asenji Afana analyzes their African origin using the following 4 elements: jus sanguinis or parentage-based nationality and the absence of state intervention in local commercial affairs, a gerontocracy and diplomatic treaties based upon cooperation and shared responsibilities, the existence of countermeasures against corruption by deep state institutions, and social life regulated by public opinion and pre-established conventions. According to Afana, the lack of class antagonisms in pre-colonial Africa originates in the absence of capital penetration on the continent. Capital is created when surplus value is secularized and individualized. In African economies, currencies functioned as commodity equivalents with sociocultural significance that did not exist within a capital circuit. Here, surplus value was collectivized and distributed to the less fortunate. The structural utility of these currencies was made to move goods and services throughout regional zones to the benefit of the society as a whole. Some examples of African currencies are salt, cowries, gold dust, metallurgical items, and even fabric squares called chiguia. There is even an example of checks being used in pre-colonial Africa. Chancellor Williams, in his book Rebirth of African Civilization, states that capitalism did not exist during the Middle Ages. The usage of currencies for profit did not exist prior to the 12th century, and during this period, money was not a god nor the chief determinant and measure of values and success. From the 14th century onward, the desire for profit became the most powerful motive in the lives of men, and this is what led to the development of capitalism in the late 15th and early 16th century, coinciding with the Ma'afa and the international enslavement of African people by the ever-expanding European empires. Mama Marimba Ani states that the kuntu, the modality of expression, or conceptual modality, can be limiting or it can be liberating. The kuntu of capitalism is exploitative. It acts to mold the consciousness to perceive human relationships in terms of material power over the other. It is a modality of control. One of the most important connections between Christianity and technology since the colonial period is that missionary Christianism paves the way for capitalism and the European-centric market economy. Now, this draws a connection between the growth of the imperialist religions from the standpoint of Europe and the loss and the degradation of our original African systems of divine kingship. Dr. Walter Rodney, in his book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, splits the Afrikan Mode of Production in the following systems: the Remen-Kimi system, the Nubian system, the Ethiopian system, the Maghreb system, the West African system of the Oya and Senegal River valleys, the Interlake Lacustrine Zone system of the Great Lakes region, and the Zimbabwean system. All of these systems are defined by ecological and environmental veneration as a central component of the economy. According to Walter Rodney, though Africa was not capitalist, thriving commercial sectors, moneylenders, and strong handicraft industries were prominent elements of the AMP. An example of this is the Dahomey Cowrie storage house called the Aquejo that were designed for protection from fire and theft. Their owners functioned as money holders for others who deposited their savings in the storehouses of their wealthy neighbors for greater security. These savings were used in loans to third parties. The primary difference between this system and modern banking is that these money holders charge depositors for using their storehouses rather than using interest to attract funds. Now, this has been a brief overview of the AMP. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.